Hello, we are going to have a baby, and the baby is this podcast. Welcome to the Old Young Ones. We are talking about episode 2 of season 2, Cash. And with me, as always, is Howie Weingarten.
Oh!
How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Weingarten right here, Howie.
Yeah. It means vineyard in German.
As they used to say to him in high school drama class, I never promised you a Weingarten.
Yeah, very nice.
They did.
Very nice. I like that.
And with us today, our special guest today to talk about this, who our third string film critic emeritus for the Village Voice, a Gen Xer that knows everything that happened within Gen X in pop culture, an accomplished bassist and film critic. Eddie Crouse is here. How are you?
Eddie!
Thank you very much. Thank you for thank you for snowing me so well. Good to see you. Good to snow you. Yeah, I'm doing okay. How are you guys doing?
Doing well. We all decided to start alcohol, so it's going to get better and better.
You froze. Wait.
That was a technical difficulty at starting this. We had to get drinks. Yeah.
You guys both froze on me, you bastards.
No.
Fascists.
You were fine. Fascist bully boys.
Fascist bully boys.
We're going to get into Cash. We'll start from the beginning. This
Cash.
episode, I'm gonna say up front. Disregarding the Queen references. I'm gonna say up front. I felt this was a middling episode, yet everything worked perfectly. I feel like this shows the young ones completely in their groove. They know who their characters are. They know how to react to situations. They know how to bounce off each other. They work like a team in this one, which they don't usually do. And even though it's not one of my favorites, I thought it worked. It was like clockwork.
Yeah, I was thinking it braided together really beautifully, and it hit. It had good callbacks, and it had certain, you know, it's not just about. It had almost a coherent theme, like materiality and literality versus like weird spiritual emanations and mysteries. So I can really dig that. Yeah.
And I feel like all the weird cutaways and manic things that the young ones shown that is known for, all of them contributed to the theme, if not the plot.
Yeah,
which was unusual. There were only a few things where I was like, okay, that was meaningless. But most things I was like, oh, that's kind of what they're talking about.
And it's coming on the heels of Bambi, which to me I watched that too, and it was like it was a little more herky jerky. I felt like in Bambi, where they were adhering to the theme. I thought a little bit more.
Yeah,
it was
Bambi is
crazy.
Separate episodes where
it's psychotic.
As soon as Neil says we have to get on a train, it's a new episode.
Yeah,
but this was like even though it does shift into Neil having to get a job, it's still based on them needing money. Whereas the other episode, like the flimsiest of connections, it's like the 6th minute of a Simpsons episode.
Yeah,
the amount of connectivity. But we start right in the middle of the premise, which is we don't build up to it.
Yeah.
It's not like they're normal and they run out of money.
Right.
The house is already bare,
empty. Cold.
They're already burning
blankets. They're burning anything that they can find.
It's positively Lynchian, actually, just starting in this like otherworldly thing, and
because we start with just Neil, who's trying to make dinner, but everything is disappearing, and that's when he decides that the house is haunted, which will last for about 2 minutes.
A poltergeist.
Yeah, poltergeist, which is one of my favorite things. There's a needle drop in this when it starts, and the young ones are like, they have a trope of like having these needle drops that you can barely hear. And I don't know what the song was, but I was assuming it was a Cliff Richard song.
I looked it up. Yeah, what was it? Cliff Richard and the Drifters. I don't know. Called Move It.
Cliff Richard. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Because it is a record that Rick is listening to until Vivian takes the record player.
Yeah.
And the book. And the chair.
So that's what I mean. It starts with the presumption of some kind of eerie spiritual thing, and then immediately he's literally reading the book of Marx, the great historical materialist, and it's taken away from him, and then the record player. So 2 things, and then we know why literally everything is missing. So they sort of give it away.
It's not much of a mystery, but there's great there's great slapstick right away.
Yeah.
Like I think Rick falling down the stairs and ripping out all of the banister
Ow, my balls.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Then I say, where'd you get that firewood? Between my legs. And everything about it is working. There's no weird experimental jokes. They know who the characters are, and they know how each one of them will react in this.
Yeah, none of those jokes are particularly clever, but they're funny. They're just the old standard jokes that just kind of always make people crack up. We'll get into it. This is an episode with multiple fart jokes. Believe me.
This is an episode that builds to a fart joke.
Oh yeah,
great.
It is.
We're done here.
The world revolves around the fart joke.
Yeah.
Well, there was copious flatulence in the last one too. Bambi had flatulence.
Yep.
Right.
Bambi.
Well, we're slapstick. The basis of Rick and Aid is all slapstick, so it's going to be low.
It's always
But the first line, I wrote this down. The very first line anyone says in this episode is "Vivian, you bastard." And I'm like, how much more on brand do you need to get? It's like a Simpsons episode starting with dough.
I every time they say the word bastard, I want to do a shot.
There's a lot of bastards in this.
Bastards, I love this freaking. And hey, bastard, okay.
So
don't mind if I do.
Yeah, so I love each one of them is on their own thing. They're all focused on the same dilemma, which usually isn't the case. Usually, like one person
never happens
out in left field and not being listened to. But they're all focused on the fact that all the furniture is gone. Like all the normal furniture in the set is taken away. And we were talking about this in the last episode of Bambi, how they added to the set in season 2. And I think this is why, because so much of this episode takes place around a fireplace, which does not exist in season 1.
Oh, interesting.
So I think they knew they needed it for this episode, so they might as well just build it for the season and extend that. Dining. Well, it doesn't extend anything because in season 1 there's a full kitchen and a full living room. Now there's just dead space with a fireplace.
That's what I mean. It got pretty surreal pretty quickly.
Yeah,
but they actually at the end of the episode they do fill it up with everything that truckload of money that comes through.
Rapturous,
and of course. It never lasts.
No,
it never freaking lasts. And we'll get into why it didn't last, but it's a fart joke. And
but there's I love all the interactions they have in talking about it with Neil. Neil thinking there's a poltergeist, and he's trying to nail the plates to the table, but they keep shattering.
Apropos of what? That's just pure.
Well, because he thinks the plates are disappearing, so he's going to nail them down.
Right,
but they just keep splitting. And I love while they're arguing about it, Mike just picks it up and he's starting and mentions
he's successful.
Yeah, and he's not working with. But I love their argument about nailing the plates. He's like, and what do we do when we play Monopoly? Go directly to plate. And he's just the little logic of like, Neil's like, everyone sit down, and then they start arguing that there's no chairs, but there's chairs in the car. So they go
the table is sinking.
And they don't come out.
Yeah, but Neil's not coming, so they want him to make a tape. And if
he touches Vivian's car, he'll kill him. Which is a great line.
It's like a Three Stooges plan.
I was going to say it's Three Stooges, little Laurel and Hardy. Like they just have these petty situations and they can barely get through each of them. Tick off like how to get to the next one.
These convoluted solutions that are based in stupidity.
Yeah. One thing that I love about Rick is that Rick always does what Rick does. He says one thing and then immediately goes back to the other. He's just like, there's no such thing as ghosts. Everything's got a rational thing. And it was like all of a sudden Mike seems to be floating because he's nailed himself, to the table. And he's like, oh my God, no, I believe in God. And he's crossing himself all wrong.
But he doesn't cross himself at all. He just waves his arms.
But that's what I think what he's supposed to be doing is like crossing himself. But it's just like, okay, that's a drunken sign of the cross, obviously. So, anyway.
And it's a great button with Mike. I mean, Mike's such a great straight man in it because he's not talking to anybody. Yeah. And then he's just hunched in pain.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't explain it
and then he has those wonderful bloody bandages on his thighs.
Never met a priest. Never met a vicar call an ambulance.
Well, the thing is, Vivian saws the legs off the table and the table stays there. And then and the chair stays there, and Mike's like, well, I've laid my legs on the table, which means he had to nail them through his legs into the chair.
Crucified thighs. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's gotta leave a mark.
That's smarts, doesn't it? Well, see, that's when you mentioned Howie, when you mentioned him doing the sign of the cross suddenly and betraying his anarchist, materialist, Marxist principles, right?
Right.
This is an episode about selling out for cash or selling out for just something.
Oh my God, yeah, Ed, you're right.
Because of course, like, Neil ends up, becoming a and sort of miming. Well, we'll get to it later, but miming clubbing someone. Then he actually does club a hippie, and he's like, "Oh, what was that?" So
he likes it.
Yeah,
and he likes it too. That's the funny thing. Just like, like, ooh, I like being in charge. Being part of the establishment's fun.
Yeah, but at this point we get our first cutaway, which are the ghosts, which I think really, really works.
Who are those two guys?
It's the comedy team that we've seen so many times before. They were the cops at the party.
That's where they are. Yep. Okay.
And
that's them. That's them.
I'm embarrassed because when we had Andrew Torres, he's like, these are the guys, and that they've left my brain.
Yeah.
And I know we've named them, but they're great in this. And I like that whole sketch. It's
Codpiece face.
Codpiece face is
Don't tell me that. You're Codpiece face.
Well, it's also, do they often have people from the Shakespearean era like that? I mean, it's like it's like Blackadder too. It runs parallel to Blackadder.
Sometimes they do, yeah. And we were talking about how there's such a Venn diagram is basically a circle between Blackadder and Young Ones. Is that the second season takes place after Blackadder 1 and before Blackadder 2, and Blackadder 2 is when Ben Elton will come over and he'll bring everybody. Rick Mayall and Adrian Edmondson and Nigel Manor. They'll all just show up. Fry and Laurie.
Right.
So they're almost one show in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure.
But I like that whole sketch in the woman's apartment, and I don't know why. And I'm gonna give this question.
The guy on the TV.
Oh yeah. That's great.
It's kind of a public service announcement or scientific explanation
that goes all wrong. It's just like imagine this.
Well, then it has the pun,
a young mother.
Yeah, but it has that strange. I think it's a sexual reference of saying this is what happens when the car mounts the pavement and destroys everything. I mean, there's some
everything gets
insemination going on there.
Everything gets softer and softer. He's like, this overripe tomato is a boy, and this bag of mashed bananas is an old person, and this cricket bat with a brick nailed to it
is your car.
And it's like I felt like it was making fun of like the don't do drugs stuff,
exactly,
which was getting very prevalent in America at the time
because that was Mothers Against Drunk Driving, I think, back then.
Yeah, and because he doesn't talk about drunk driving, he goes, think once, think twice, don't drive your car on the pavement. As a decision that
your car mounts the pavement. It mounts the pavement. Just like,
John, I could have seen you in that role of that guy if you were on that. I could see you doing that with the smashing and the stuff. You'd be good at it.
If there only wasn't already a Gallagher.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, he was a pioneer.
Yeah, and that actor appears in season 1 in the first episode as one of the pilots. One of the pilots that crashes into the house, but they have no controls.
Oh yeah, you're right.
It's kind of an English Conrad Bain a little bit.
He is, yeah.
Oh my God, yeah. Wow, good one. You know what the funny thing is? For a moment, I thought he was Mr. Right Bleeding Bastard from Bomb.
Yeah. No, but
no, that's not him.
But that a bearded guy. He is
I love that bearded guy. I think he's on another episode, but we'll find out.
A lot. So the ghosts are in the woman's apartment while this is going on, and I don't know what it is, but there's something oddly sexy about this woman.
Yeah. Oh no,
is it? I don't know.
I was a bra when she steps to the window.
I've always found her sexy. Maybe
was it Vivian's mother? Was that Vivian's?
It is not.
No. It's the lady next door, right? It's like
no. I meant to say the lady who played Vivian's mother. It's not her. Okay, that's fine.
The lady who played Vivian's mother is also in the Blackadder Christmas Carol. This woman I've never seen before, but she's like mad and she's farting. It's like there's something.
That's my dream woman.
Yeah, maybe it's the posture she takes in the window, like
she's
she's using her hips very well at the window.
I'm on eHarmony. I'm looking for a woman who can fart and be angry. I'm not on eHarmony. No. I'm just kidding. But seriously, it's just like, yeah, she's angry. She's flatulent.
Mm-hmm.
She's watching TV.
Yeah,
that's true. There's a
and she'll give you a cup of sugar.
Yeah, she's accessible. Well, I love when Vivian shows up at the window. It's
hi, I'm your neighbor.
It's so Muppet-like. Anytime you have a character that's cut off at the stomach, it's Muppet vibes. I was rewatching News Radio. I found some on Pluto TV, which is probably the most underrated show in the 90s. And there's an episode where Phil Hartman decides he's going to be Mark Russell as his new career.
Oh, boy.
And he's constantly like playing a piano and writing and singing public domain songs about whitewater.
Back when the world was normal.
But there's one shot where it's framed by this stand-up piano and he's playing and Dave Foley runs in and their body language is so completely Kermit and Fozzie that I remember when it aired, I was like, oh, this is why I like this show. And that's what Vivian has when he comes into the window. And he's just laughing. He's like, And she's just mad at him and yelling at him.
Well, I think he's already taken like what 4 or 5 different cups of sugar.
Six times.
6 times, yeah.
Right. And then, of course, cup of sugar being a metaphor for, and I was trying to figure out, what the source of the miracle pregnancy of him later is, and I was just like, well,
it's Immaculate Conception.
Well, maybe it has something to do with that cup of sugar or that woman. Maybe her spirit impregnated him. Who the hell knows?
I don't know, but I love the fact that he's borrowing a cup of sugar, which I feel like is that typical Americana, like Patrick Farr from The Neighbor.
Oh yeah,
but the fact that he's taking sugar in a ceramic cup and throwing it in the fire, that does nobody any good. That sugar melts and
he throws the cup into the fire and he empties the sugar, and I was just like, empties the sugar, throws the cup in the fire.
He's never going to be able to return that cup now.
Well, that's the thing, because she says you better return my cups, and he's like, yes, I will. And she grabs him. Like, this is the only person I've seen get like aggressive with Vivian. Like, she is not afraid.
And he kind of stops down.
No.
Yeah.
He's
a tough broad. Yeah.
That may be another thing that's making her appealing. That she's the most dominant force in the entire series.
The woman who takes control. You gotta love her.
You do.
Which by
so from there we get to the bank manager letter, which I
is classic,
utter masterpiece. Yeah,
I mean,
that is classic.
Talk about knowing your character's perspectives.
Yeah. Oh God,
that's true. They all fill in with their particular
unique perspective, right?
Language. Yeah.
So I transcribed the whole thing because I did not want to get this wrong, but as they keep adding things and taking out. Vivian says, if you say dear bank manager, it sounds like, do you want to go to bed with me? So Neil's constantly crossing it out. So the final letter he writes is, darling fascist bully boy, give me some more money, you bastard. May the seed of your loin be fruitful in the belly of your woman, Neil. And then they crumple up the letter and
burn it.
A way of sending it into the ether.
Yeah, it's just it's each character contributing what they contribute to the situation.
Well, I love Rick.
Yeah.
I love Rick when he's that's okay. That's okay. I love Rick when he's just I forget what he says. He's like, oh, why don't you just stick your tongue down the back of his trousers or something like that?
That was the biggest laugh. Yeah.
And what makes you think that your bank manager's a man?
He's like, his mustache,
his beard.
Yeah.
I was just like, I mean, the sketch is just it's a quick 2-minute sketch. Yeah, it's hysterical.
And again, we
sketch within the it's true.
We've been talking about this a lot throughout the podcast. Is like this is less of a sitcom and more of a sketch show. When it's like
for sure,
like that sketch has a beginning, middle, and end. The same way that the plates has a beginning, middle, and an end.
Right, and then they go back to the ghosts after that.
Yeah, and the ghosts actually like are it's one of the only cutaways that we ever come back to. Because there have been so many cutaways in the show where like, I don't know who those characters are. I don't know what they want. I don't know why they were here for a minute and they're never coming back.
But apparently Neil was right though. The place is haunted.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like
well, the block is haunted because they're haunting the neighbor as much as they're haunting them.
Yeah, I mean
Well, and then I found it strange that they were speaking in this strangely literal terms about Shakespeare's plays being written by Bacon. I was like, Bacon with his hands? No, Bacon has no hands. I was like, what?
Yes.
But it rhymes. And of course it rhymes and ties in with what's actually going on in the scene. So
yeah, and I like that. It's the only time you see that the main characters are continuing. They're not
exactly. They're sort of continuing the thought.
Yeah, I feel like in the first season it was so much more stagey that I think if this happened in the first season, the four of them would have stood back and stopped reacting. But their scene is continuing, and we don't hear it.
Yeah.
But of course, it comes back to the second greatest Rick Mayall line ever. Because I am not being aggressive. Yes, you are.
That is a meme.
Yeah,
that's a meme. That is just like, there are still photos of Mayall just delivering that line in just pure, adrenaline, just, turmoil.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No. It's something that you see all over. It's an amazing, and only Rick Mayall could have delivered that line.
Yeah, I think it's second only to "Hands Up, Who Likes Me."
Yeah,
in Bambi.
That's in Bambi. Yeah.
What were you gonna say, buddy?
Greatest Rick line.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, I've only seen a handful of the episode. Does he always have the Elmer Fudd? It's called the L vocalization. Is that a strange
W's? Yes.
Yeah, when he says W's, so it's like Dueño Blaine. Yeah.
Yeah, it always sneaks in. There's that episode where
he goes, always,
trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's part of that character, but it's not so defining, but it is always there.
It's wobbly. It's there. Yeah.
Not all the time, some of the time, and when it does happen, it's pretty damn funny.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
they space it out so it doesn't get too hackneyed.
Yes, I was going to say they don't run they don't drive the shtick into the ditch.
It's not as defining.
Right. No.
Yeah, but this is where we get to what's going to be the plot for pretty much the rest of the episode, where they realize that one of them has to get a job, and and immediately Rick and Mike start like calling themselves 4F, and this is where Vivian says that he's going to have a baby, which I wrote is the most Beavis and Butthead plan that he's ever had.
Yeah. Well, I went to the doctor, and he told me that I'm pregnant, he's going line by line. It's just like, okay, what can I say now? What is anyone challenging me? Okay, what can I say now? It's like a baby,
Rick is the only one who's approaching that men can't have babies, and every time he gets near it, they shut him right down.
Yeah.
Like Mike's like, well, how old are you? But he's like, how could that happen?
Did he ever teach you about the birds and the bees?
Yeah.
Right.
And then I think it's an obvious joke, but it's a joke I haven't heard much, where he's like, when Neil's like, I don't understand that. Like, what if the bird gets stung?
taking it literally. Yeah.
Really? Yeah. It's great.
Yeah. I mean, I always wondered why they said birds and bees. There's no connection between those two.
If there is, I want to see it.
Yeah. And then this is where it just ramps up. Like, I feel like they felt like they've been building tension enough where they all have to start screaming at this point.
Yeah.
Because they start saying he's going to give birth, which he doesn't. He just starts running around holding his butt. And this is where Rick just starts screaming, and it's such a beautiful focus of that moment where he's like, he'll be born a pauper. I hope you're satisfied, Thatcher. Yeah.
Victorian values are back. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is the second time Rick looks into the camera, because first he looks in the camera to talk about eating his earwax.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
That's so important that he breaks the fourth wall.
I love that.
We all know how disgusting it is to eat your earwax, right, kids?
Thumbs up.
Yeah, but I hope you're satisfied. Thatcher is
it's a beautiful line. It's funny as all hell.
It's the thanks Obama of the British 80s.
Yeah, basically, kind of.
Do they often break to address that directly, or is this something peculiar to this very Marxian episode?
I will say not every episode, but it's in a lot of them.
It's embedded.
Mike is the one who usually breaks the wall the most.
Yeah.
Mike usually breaks the wall the most. And then other character, I don't think Vivian ever really breaks well, he did in Oil. where he goes, "I lied about the oil" at the end of the first show, but
right,
but Neil breaks the wall, but not so much Rick.
Rick will ramp up to a leftist rant. There's usually another character there for him to yell at, but this one I think he's really going to the camera, but it's not overdone. It's done.
He did it once in Bambi. Yeah. He did it once in Bambi. Was just like right commuters when he was just talking about like British Rail or whatever. So yeah, I mean it's something I think that they may have started to come up with. Have utilized mail as much as possible. It's fucking genius, so do it. Yeah.
It could be a second season thing because we're gonna as we're coming up to, we're going to have that have a scene with a frame cut in. And that happens every episode, but only in season 2.
Right, the subliminal.
Yeah.
One, there's always a shot of the fifth roommate that I've never seen.
I never have seen the guy.
No, there's always
as hard as I.
Yeah.
Hard as I look, never see the guy.
Yeah.
Yep.
So here's where we have the cutaway that makes no sense, and this is the thing where I've seen this as a meme on the Young Ones page all the time, and I was shocked because how you said you didn't remember this part, and this is one of the parts I've always remembered the series of just this guy's face just comes in and
what is up with that?
I don't know who he is. He doesn't seem to be wearing a shirt.
Oh he does this Christian Bale a little bit, American Psycho.
This is crazy little monologue, and he's gone.
Yeah, you won't catch me with the trousers. I've seen as a meme every 3 days on Young One social media.
It does call back to the Goldfish Bowl. That's the head of one of those, Shakespearean era actors too.
Yeah.
Like what they mistake the head, and then they mistake his head, the grapefruit for his head. Well, I have no idea where the Goldfish Bowl came back in.
There is a whole scene in season 1 about Alexi Sale drinking a Goldfish Bowl. So there's something that I don't know what it is, but I find that guy's mesmerizing. Every time I'm like, oh, this guy, what's this guy up to? It's how you feel about Dickie and Dino in season 1, Howie.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a scene that shows up and goes away. Eddie, there's a scene in the first season where Rick and Nigel Planner just play these two brat packers for like 3 minutes, and then they're on the golf course and they sing a song, and then it just cuts back and they have nothing to do with anything. But it's the kind of thing where you just wonder, who are these characters? What are they about? Where are they going? Can we go back to them? And we don't. And that's what I feel about this manic Joker-like Christian Bale character
with no shirt on. I think that's why I thought of American Psycho. It's just like he's built. He's a fashion.
He may have been the influence of American Psycho. Who knows?
Who knows?
Now, what was the cutaway? I remember, like after it was right before he tells the pregnancy, or it was right after, and it cuts away to somebody like with two angels flanking him.
Oh God!
I'm God.
Like a control
it's God.
Room. Yeah, it is God, but he sort of looks like Peter Sellers, and he's just like, "Don't blame me" or whatever.
Yeah, it's when it.
I thought he looked like Hugh Hefner. That's so funny.
Yeah, surrounded by slightly sexy angels.
It's the whole scene where Neil's feeding Mike. Neil is feeding Mike and Vivian Snow. And
that's right.
Rick is not having snow because they've
risotto.
They're sitting on him. Yeah, he says it's risotto. And that's where he says, "I've had enough for God's sake," and then they just cut to God at a mixing board. By the way,
that's what I mean. I thought he was like the producer. Then he was like, maybe it was like a control board, like a switchboard.
Yeah, they and all he says is, "Don't look at me, I didn't cook it," and then they cut back. And it was the first time I actually heard it because, as we talked about, they were cheap videotape, and back in the 90s, I had videotaped them all from Comedy Central, and so it was videotape dumbed down to VHS, dumbed down from broadcast to VHS, and I didn't know what he said. And then when I heard what he said finally today, I was like, well, that wasn't worth it. You have to get extras for that. That's an actor that comes
and to do all the subliminal frames, of which there was one in the. It was like a spoiler because after he said it was risotto, then it was the shot of. Did everybody see the subliminal frame?
Yes, the skier.
The skier.
Yes,
where he says snow.
I had to pause it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, in that scene when Mike calls a house meeting, I love the dance that Vivian and Neil do about house meeting. Yeah. It seems like they do it all the time. There's house meeting. A house meeting.
That's like the Bambi dance that they did on University Challenge.
Yeah.
You know, but I love the fact that Mike just pulls out a gun and fires it in the air
to get your attention. Yeah,
to get your attention.
And I love he says later, he goes, "Sorry about the noise. I fired a gun."
You had to tell them, right? In case you didn't notice.
Yeah. In case you didn't know.
Now this is where the musical numbers is cut out. It was when we saw it in syndication. It was in there, but it did not make it to the DVDs. It's not. The Young Ones is not streaming anywhere legally, but I own the iTunes library version, and it's not streaming there. But it's this super group called Ken Bishop's Nice 12, is it?
Yes.
Yeah. Stuart Copeland is the only name that I recognized.
Jules Holland is in there. I believe the singer from Squeeze
Chris
is
Difford
in there.
Is also in there as ex-bandmate.
Yeah, I feel.
I don't really.
Eddie, I feel like if anybody recognized all 12, it would be you. And I don't think there's 12.
There's 12
one
in
of
there.
Them is one of them is the show's composer, whose name now escapes me, Brewis or something. So he's the actual composer of the Young Ones. Score is folded into there. No, the other ones I didn't really notice. I tried looking them up randomly, and they were all like involved in the comedy scene. But I think obviously the only ones that we've heard of are Copeland, Difford, and Jules Holland.
Yeah, and I think the reason we don't see it's the only musical number that's been cut out of the Young Ones,
like consistently.
Although this episode is really long, with the song missing, the episode is still 34 minutes long.
Yeah, well, maybe it's because it's a cover too.
It's a Bob Dylan.
Maybe Dylan didn't.
I think so because they're doing Bob Dylan's Subterranean Homesick Blues.
Yeah,
and So I think they didn't have the rights for Dylan because obviously there's no rights with that band. It was a bunch of guys from different bands got together. Stuart Copeland is great in it. First time I saw it, he was the only one I recognized.
Right, exactly.
And he's playing.
Can't use my song.
And at first, he's playing the baritone sax, and then he nudges somebody off the drums, and then he ends up playing.
Yeah, he ends up playing.
Right. Yep.
He's got the black John Lennon glasses.
Yep, that's him.
Yeah, and it's sad because like we have all these musical numbers from like bands that kind of like came and went. That we don't remember anymore, and then there's Motorhead and there's
Motorhead.
Few big ones, yeah. But this one I feel like is so special and it's just missing. You can find it on its own on YouTube.
Yeah,
YouTube,
but it has been cut out.
And it does have a wonderful shot of Viv seeming to piss in another man's face. I mean, that was.
I was trying to figure out which one of them it was.
It wasn't anyone. Yeah, it wasn't any of the stars, musical stars.
Yeah, but this is the whole payoff of Neil has to join the army, and they cut off half his hair, and he's wearing Mike's suit, which he had to rent. And it's like
short.
But the weird thing is, you think it's going to build up to this whole army recruitment, but they throw him out immediately. And then they just go, well, we'll join the police, which is the same premise.
Yeah.
Because there's no reason why like the police recruitment scene isn't an army scene, or why they didn't just say join the police to begin with.
One joke that I love that's it's a little bit before this, but it has something to do with what we're talking about right now, is that all of a sudden it's just like, well, why don't we get a paper and look for the want ads or the situation's vacant? All of a sudden the paper gets thrown in from like off stage. They go to the want ads and there's no jobs available.
One ad. Yeah.
There's one ad to join the army. And then he doesn't get into the army.
And considering it's just like, how much they wanted to burn things, like a newspaper would have been a real help at any time.
Yeah.
Up to that point.
This is like an episode where it's funny because like we'll get to the this at the end. There are some little bit of like, and you can't really say it because it's based on such a ludicrous premise most of the time. There's some really big like holes in like some of the things that some of the logic.
Oh yeah,
we'll get. But that's I love that. It's just like,
and
I'll tell you when we get to the end. It's a glaring one. But anyway, so the thing is,
and I think they established the lapses in logic when they talk about sitting in the car to hear what Neil's saying, but not inviting him to the car. I feel like they've already shown that their logic has some severe flaws, and that's why I kept.
You don't need it. That's what makes it even better.
Well, that's why I kept thinking of Beavis and Butthead. It's that idea of having a plan that's the worst plan possible. And
right. It's like this master plan that you think is going to work.
Yeah.
And never does. Never.
We just rewatched one of the new Beavis and Buttheads, which are amazing.
Are they?
Oh yeah, because Mike Judge has
honed his craft. Yeah.
Yes, in the last 30 years. And there's an episode where they're having a field trip that's on the time zone between Texas and New Mexico. So Beavis and Butthead decide they can travel through time by walking around the sign. Yeah. And eventually they get really dizzy and they fall into a ditch and they're looking at the desert and they're like, we've gone into the past. And it's this plan that is fundamentally flawed from the beginning, but they followed it to its logical conclusion. But and I feel like they're doing that in this episode.
You know. But I guess that brings us then to the point where it's just like there's a sign for the police. We take anybody. Anyone.
You can have a gun if you want.
You can have a gun if you want. You know?
It's a little too close to home, guys.
Yeah, and then in the middle of that is the special branch gag with the pup.
Oh, yeah. You know, well, I've got a degree in it. Like, well, this is
special branch. I know.
You know, but what do you think? What do you think of Alexei Sayle in this episode? Because Alexei is great as a lightning rod for people who love him, people who think, meh, it's all right, and people who I fast forward through his scenes.
Oh God, I thought it was all cylinders firing in this one.
Yeah. He's
a great Mussolini.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It is uncanny.
I feel like it definitely comes out of his stand-up because the thing is he leaves. Neil leaves and they do the special branch gag and then they cut back so Alexei can do a bit about looking like Mussolini at a club. And then it goes to him singing
the Stupid Noises song. Yeah.
Yeah, which reminds me there's a Monty Python.
It's very Python.
Yeah, there's a Python episode that ends with the police talent show where Graham Chapman sings Bing Tittle Tittle Bang. And it's the same set where he stands on a little cylinder and he starts screaming nonsense. And there's just streamers behind him. And it's the end of that episode. The credits are rolling past him. And I'm like, okay, this is a direct correlation to his Stupid Noises.
You know, Stupid Noises is always great. You know, it's funny. Just I always enjoy sometimes on the Young Ones social media pages. He and Mike are such lightning rods of people who either are so into them or so not into them. I don't think the show could be not nearly as successful. Look, Neil, Rick, and Vivian are the center of the show. There's no doubt about that. Mike and the Bolosky family, Alexei Sayle. You know what? The thing is that whether it worked or whether it didn't work with some of the things that Sayle does in some of the episodes, I can't imagine the show actually without him. Because there's something about him that's just there's something about him that's great because it's just you love him or maybe you don't love him. But the thing is that he makes you talk. He makes you talk about what he just did. And that's what I like about Alexei Sayle. Sometimes he makes me crack up really hard. Sometimes, not so much. But the thing is that you're always talking about him because it's just did you see what Sayle did? What did you think about that? You know?
I think both Alexei Sayle and Chris Ryan bring a different energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Which broadens out the show because we've often talked about their other shows like Filthy Rich and Cat Flap and Bottom, which are good, but they're not quite as good because they don't have as many facets. And that's what having these different voices in the show did. Well,
Eddie, have you seen Bottom?
No, I've not. Yeah.
Okay.
Bottom's interesting. Bottom is just Rick Mayall and Adrian Edmondson, and they made it in the 90s. And it's pretty much if Rick and Vivian had done nothing with their lives, and now they were middle-aged and broke. And
if they survived that bus explosion at the end of Summer Holiday.
It is all
slapstick.
Yeah, it's the two of them throwing each other downstairs.
There's a lot of bottoms in this episode too. That's the funny part.
There is.
Yeah,
it's literal.
Yeah, there is.
And then his bottom ends up in the fire, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Rick.
Oh, it does. Yes,
right. Yeah, it's very nice of you, Rick, to offer that.
Oh, Mike's so happy when he goes in there.
You know?
Yeah. So that's what, yeah. So we see, for some
I do
reason,
love Chris Ryan. I love Chris Ryan.
I guess there's one bed left because they give that to Vivian, and his stomach is all bloated at this point. So either he's committed to the bit or he just was already feeling gassy and used it.
You know? It was funny because it's like Rick comes over. He's just like, you know, he's just like, have you thought of a name for the baby? Shut up or piss off.
Yes.
He's just like, I'm just asking for the name. He's just like, no, those will be the names. It'll be great for bar fights.
Joke. Yeah, it's such a musical joke.
I love that joke.
And then quickly on the heels of that is the baby starts kicking and Rick gets the strangest, kinkiest wiggle to him.
Oh, he's like,
he's so turned on or something.
And then,
okay, well, it's an interesting situation.
And then the stomach punches him in the side of the head.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting because we know there's no baby. Which means that Vivian can control his stomach muscles enough.
His intestines or something in there.
With half of a bloated stomach.
Under his control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we play that off with Neil actually being a cop, which I think they get the most out of this.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Because he has to go to his friend's hippie party.
Warlock's hippie party.
Yes, and I love him knocking on the door. He's like, open up, it's the pigs.
He actually says it twice.
Yeah.
Because I think the audience was laughing so hard. I don't know. It's just like he says it twice.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but
and then he gets a second laugh from the same joke.
Yeah, and it works. And
you know,
as you say, Warlock opens the door. We saw Warlock in season 1, so now he's a recurring character because he showed up at the party and interesting.
Warlock was fun. Oh, I love Warlock.
Yes. He is funny. He's a Zap Comics character come to life, and the whole thing is a big Zap Comics thing. Yeah.
And it reminded me of how, like, oh yeah, hippies never left. It was like,
like
the world moved on from hippies, but there were enough people like just living that lifestyle, even in the early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I remember in the late 80s them having a comeback because classic rock had hit that 20-year.
Freedom rock? Yeah.
Yeah, freedom rock, exactly.
Freedom rock, baby. Yeah.
It's like when it's like when Eric Clapton's touring in Armani suits. It's like that era.
Yeah, right.
And the traveling Wilburys were a thing.
Oh, sure. Steve Winwood was doing those Michelob commercials.
Oh, yeah. Roll with it. Yeah. It was like that point where all of the 60s guys came back to as yuppies. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's when the hippies came back. But no, early 80s, this is new wave, and they haven't left at all.
That's what I was thinking about this election. It's just like, well, we kind of gave boomers a chance. I guess we have to leap to Gen X, and now JD Vance is millennials. I was just like, oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, we can't govern.
Yeah, there's
we're children of the greedy ones. Yeah.
It's a no-win situation.
Well, one thing I always found, one thing I heard this on a podcast. No, because of course the generations are, you know, they're different demographics. They're there to be marketed to, you know, you're this specific one. And, but some wag observed that Gen X was the last generation who had an idea of selling out. And I think of that in this episode, of course, because they're all like going against their principles. Sure. But millennials have no beyond that. What is that? What is selling out? Oh, you just go work and you do this and you become a brand. You know what I mean? This whole idea of becoming a brand is like.
But I think it's the idea.
What's your brand? Victim.
Oh, God.
Millennials are just trying to not be poor, so they're trying.
Yeah. Right. They're generations of precarity. You know, as you go.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah, I was just listening to it might have been the same podcast, but I was listening to Patton Oswalt on
let's just say it's the same podcast. Sure. I like that guy.
But he was talking about how he was so against selling out, and now that he's in his 50s, he's like, what? I was against being successful? Like,
right.
Was I gonna play the same coffee
Is that
house?
funny? Yep. Yeah. Is that funny?
Yeah,
and I know it. And I know
I'm
come up with this
show now. It's like my career has continued to go.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we talked about this with Alexi Sale. Alexi Sale, so that alt comic, he seemed like he does a whole bit about not selling out, which will show up, I believe, in the next episode, Nasty.
Oh,
and
the vampire
that he won't sell out. And we talked about in Band, he was very against having like a Fry and Laurie and Emma Thompson on the show. He thought it undermined their punk aesthetic. But then after this is the final season of the Young Ones. Everyone goes into Blackadder, but not Alexi Sale.
Maybe because
he doesn't sell out, dude.
He doesn't sell out.
but he has a bit part in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Good for him. Good for him.
Wait a minute. Is he a Nazi in that one too? I'm trying.
No, he's the Egyptian that sells him the tank.
That's right.
Oh my God.
He wants the gray Phantom car. Goes from 0 to 60. He's got this huge beard. And
Alexi.
I remember even seeing it in the theater going, is that Alexi Sale?
Alexi Sale. All right. Good for you.
That is the best Indiana Jones. Is you with the consensus?
No, the first. Raiders.
Raiders. Yeah, probably Raiders.
Last Crusade is the second best, but Raiders is perfect.
Yeah.
The Last Crusade is really good, though.
It's funny, really elegant.
It reminds me about Spielberg, and I don't want to detract this too much, but Spielberg is always just like grabs actors and puts them in parts, and he's not necessarily a star maker. You know, he just kind of uses who he uses. And I think it was in The Paper. It was that film. He had both Bob Odenkirk and David Cross, and all the millennials were like, oh my God, you've reunited Bob and David. He was like, oh, is it distracting? Should I fire them? Who are they?
That's funny.
Yeah. It's funny. We just watched Jaws on the big screen again last week.
Dun, 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 dun.
Oh, it was reissued, like the local Regal.
There's like a little revival house out here, like a kitchen revival house. Howie, you and I.
Oh yeah, I know it.
Hollywood Boulevard, and they'll show like I've seen like Dracula and the creature film Black Lagoon there, and they did Jaws, and I hadn't seen it on the big screen so long that I noticed things I never noticed before. First of all, like seeing it on the big screen, I didn't realize how close they were to land. At the end of the movie, I'm like, oh, well, Roy Scheider and Richard Dreyfuss are in the middle of the ocean. When you see on the big screen, you're like, no, shore's right there.
About 50 yards out.
But then I was also noticing there were so many. Yeah, they're back in 20 minutes.
Yeah, right.
There were so many shots I recognized exactly from Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I realized he shot Raiders so fast.
In Jaws?
Under budget. In Jaws, that I think he just was like, this shot worked in Jaws, do it. Because there's the scene where Richard Dreyfuss goes to Roy Scheider's house, and they're having dinner talking about it, and Roy Scheider like pours the whole bottle of wine into a glass.
Just like I did at the beginning of this.
Yeah.
There you go. That's the spirit.
There's a shot where Roy Scheider's in profile drinking, and Richard Dreyfuss like center talking to him, and I was like, that is exactly the shot he does when Indy thinks Marion's dead. He's drinking the bottle of whiskey, and Balak comes to him, and I'm like, oh, he had to pull out all of his tricks.
It's a cowboy shot.
Yeah. Everybody, it doesn't matter how big a genius you are. Everybody has their tropes, and everybody has their Balak.
Yeah, sure.
One of the things that makes this episode work is they're at the point now where they know what their tropes are.
Yeah.
They know that like having Neil beat up hippies is the right way to go.
In violation of his alternative lifestyle.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because the thing is one of my favorite moments with Neil is when he goes in and everyone's just like partying, no one's listening to him, and he goes in and he smashes the record player. He's like, oh man. Like he realizes what he just did.
He realized what the album was.
And he calls out the name of the artist who was on the old girl. It's Steve Hillage. I was like, oh, and then I had to run that one down, and I was just like, oh, he's part of that weird prog scene.
I love that crowd too, because the girl says like the party's fine. There's another one I couldn't hear before today. She says it's fine because the house is on a ley line, and then she just kind of slides down the wall.
So strange. Oh yeah, that was Stonehenge. That was a woman named Stonehenge.
So one of those actresses there, I thought that was Lise Mayer, because it looked like she had like long brunette hair. She goes, I was wondering if that was her, because she looked like the same girl who was at the party in Interesting. And I'm wondering if she was just an extra.
She might have been in the background, but the woman we're talking about was really tall. She was taller than Nigel Planner, and Lisa Mayer was very short. So that's not
okay.
She could well be in the room.
Because at the end of the scene, she's sitting down up against the wall, all the way to the left, and the cop comes in and starts like whacking her with the billy club.
By the way, those cops aren't even trying to look like they're hitting them.
They're
standing like 3 feet away, and the hippies aren't reacting. They're like, the hippies are still smiling, and then
they got their stash, man. They're still going through their stash.
It's this
flush the toilet.
You know nobody tried. You know they looked at it rehearsal and was like,
no point in trying.
It's just like like an Interesting where the cops bust him because the neighbors have been complaining.
Yes.
It's just like they're like, let's do that again, but let's make it look really, really just awful.
Really cartoony.
Make it look just really cartoony. And they did a good job.
And speaking of cartoony, this is when they become rich because Rick says, "What do you think? A lorry's going to crash through the wall and be filled with money and food?" And by the way, not tied into anything. It would have been very easy to make that like a robbery that like Neil was passing over to beat up hippies or somebody at the party. No, it's just a random.
But
guy.
Mike had a plan, though.
But pure magic. Yeah,
yes.
That was great.
Mike had a plan. And how they did all that shopping to upgrade everything, but the time that
I thought everything was in that truck, like the furs and the coats and the food.
You know what? I never thought of it like that. I was just kind of like, because they really just had everything they ever needed. You know.
I love Rick changes his hair. Rick like spikes all
he spikes it all up.
And again, they become like Louis XIV's era or something. Like
Mike's that's like smoking jacket or something like that. And he says to the guy, "Here, old guy, here's a ton of money," which is a joke. Which is a joke that John and I used when we used we did this one really bad. It was a complete Python ripoff called Strongman, and it was just like, "Here's $1 million." No, it was the Strongman 2. It was we made a sequel.
We never shot it. Yeah, no,
we never shot. He's like, "Here's $1 million. Go do nothing."
My favorite line of that was, "It was a very tall stack of money. Sometimes you would teeter when you put it on the desk." That was explaining how rich it was.
That's pretty rich.
Yeah, go ahead.
Speaking of which, before, because I know this is bringing us into the home stretch of everything. I'm always one for the puppets.
Oh yeah,
those 2 dogs out there.
Wise dogs, yes.
Oh, and
what the hell?
Such a cheap joke.
It was so bad.
It's all a game.
It's so good.
It's all a game, isn't it? What? Chess. Doesn't help anything.
No, it doesn't. But it makes the show more brilliant.
Yeah, no, it did. And then there was the earlier, like the puppet had one line, but it's the mascot of Scumbag University. Does that?
Oh, SPG?
Yes.
In Bambi.
What's his name?
SPG.
Special Patrol Group.
Why is it SPG?
Because he says in the episode, "I think Special Patrol Group is a terrible name for a hamster."
It goes SPG.
Don't tell them you're a pacifist, though.
Yeah, that's all he says, and then they throw him out being a pacifist.
And that's when the musical number happens. Like
it was a big Glasgow in accent that Mello does for.
I believe it's Glaswegian.
There we go. Thank you. You know, me and my New York accent couldn't roll the.
And actually, when I found the musical number, I realized they were still playing when they threw Neil out. So not only did they cut the musical number out, they had to remix the episode to get all traces of it. So they put effort in to not have that song.
Yeah, can't play my song.
As you said, we're coming into the home stretch. Neil comes to the house.
Thinks it's the wrong house.
Thieves. Yes. Tries. And then I love the line, "Come quietly," and then he goes, "No, we're going to come very noisily."
That's like a 4-year-old. That's like 4-year-old humor.
Yeah,
it's a 4-year-old joke, but it's hysterical.
Yeah, and this is when the fart joke happens.
You know,
when like he says the baby's coming, which he had already said 15 minutes.
Oh my God, the baby is coming.
Just as serious.
And Mike's just like, "I'm out of here."
Yeah.
Mike said, "I don't want nothing to do with this. I'm out."
And then immediately Rick's like, "Call 999," which number one was
911.
No, but what? It's 911 in America. Was it 999?
Yeah, it's 999.
Okay. It's 999. Motorhead had a song with 999.
Yeah. So did Nick Lowe. No. But Nick Lowe covered a song called "Switchboard Susan," which is like a single entendre sex song. But "I Need a Doctor, Give Me 999." Good rhyme.
Yeah, you can go down the rabbit hole with Nick Lowe. I've just been Nick Lowe produced all the early Elvis Costello records, so every time I put Elvis Costello on Spotify, it always throws in some Nick Lowe. Yeah. We went to see Letters to Cleo a couple weeks ago at was not the Metro. but it was but they had a cover of Cruel to Be Kind in like some 90s high school movie, and they played it live.
Really?
I want to say 10 Things, but maybe I'm wrong.
It might have been 10 Things. Yeah, 10 Things I Hate About You with Heath Ledger and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. But yeah, Nick Lowe
Rest in power, Heath. Not Gordon.
Yeah, Nick,
yeah.
JGL.
But Nick Lowe is really the backbone of like early 80s British music. So, and then we get what we think we're going to get. We get the fart joke, which goes on.
And he handcuffs them together, of course, so no one can leave.
Very long time.
Yes. A Doctor Strangelove-like ending. Which is an explosion.
Because then Mike comes in with
he's just like, so do we got a boy or a girl?
Yeah. And I'm surprised when the house blows up that we actually see them. I thought the house blows up, that's it. Maybe they're dead until next episode. But you see them all come out of the wreckage.
Yeah. Because they've lost everything.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter because the next episode, everything's fine.
Well, that's them. It's just like that's the way. There's no memory.
That's Daffy Duck. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because like for what, for 3 minutes they had everything that they wanted, with the exception probably of women. They had everything that they wanted, and then shit just hits the fan.
As it must. There has to be a reset for sure. And bring them back to home base.
Yeah,
right.
Go directly to plate.
Yeah.
Nice.
Great way to sum it up because that's it. That's cash. That's the episode.
Cash.
So
cash is king, baby.
As I said, I thought it was a middle of the road episode that was executed beautifully. What do you guys think?
The form was wonderful, if not the content, or vice versa. No, I thought the form was actually really, really smooth. And
in fact, it's running on all cylinders so strongly. I'm still surprised they didn't do a third season. Like they felt like
a controversy.
I mean, I know that's it about British shows, but Blackadder did 4 and they were all great. So it's not like they were out of steam by the end of that.
Well, Blackadder had to sort of shift its focus though as it went along.
That first season's a little tough. It's a little tough. The 4th season's okay, but it's not the 2nd or the 3rd. And we differ.
Yeah.
You like the 2nd, I like the 3rd.
Yeah, with Miranda Richardson as the queen is just
hello.
Yeah, Miranda, yeah.
Yeah, Stephen Fry's in every episode, and Hugh Laurie's in 2 of them. But then 3 when Hugh Laurie is the prince.
You got Hugh Laurie as George. It's just like it's there's something to be said for getting out before you fuck it up.
Yeah, and I feel like America's just figured that out. Like it took decades. There's so many great shows. How many great shows are there where you tell people not to watch the last season?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And now
so it's like Game of Thrones in a way.
Yeah.
I'm a big Game of Thrones fans, and that last season I was just kind of like, no.
Sopranos' final season was still good though, right?
I think so. You know what? I'm just finishing up the new season of The Boys, and it's been a little bit of a slog.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
which one?
The Boys.
The Boys. I don't think I know that show.
It's the Amazon Prime show with Carl Urban. It's about how years of scumbags. It's incredibly violent. It's based on a Garth Ennis comic. It's in its 4th season, and it's been great.
I know. Okay.
And I wouldn't say this season's bad, but I've just been I've been dragging my feet to do the next episode. So that says something.
Sometimes you just got to know when to hold them. You got to know when to fold them. You got to know when to walk away and when to run. But the thing is
this is where I'm going to walk away.
No, hold on.
Now I'm wrapping the show up.
Hell no.
Let's quit while we're behind. Yeah.
All right. You know what? We're ahead now. Let's end it.
Well, Eddie, thank you so much for being on.
It's been a privilege drinking with you.
Yeah, Eddie, thank you, buddy.
It's
great to meet you, Howie.
It's been a great
It's good to meet you too, man. It's good to meet you too.
Eddie, this is your 2nd podcast. Are you planning any other media? I no longer promote people's social media because nobody cares anymore.
Oh, it's fine. It's fine. And I there's nothing on my social media. The previous podcast was Stephen Sondheim, where I trash the musical that's now a hit on Broadway.
Oh, which one?
But that's all right. That's all right. Its time has come, and you can always revisit something. And that's one of the things I like about you know, if somebody I really trust, like you, John, like recommends that I revisit something, I was like, okay, I'm open-minded enough to do that. And then I can double down on trashing it if I hate it.
As you should.
Were you glad to revisit the Young Ones?
Yeah, because it was from way back in the video store days.
Right.
Fucking 30 years ago now.
You saw it on video?
We had British import. The video store I worked at, we had like PAL versions.
So you got a video.
Yes, we've got a video.
Again, this was eons ago.
Which actually leads into Nasty.
Our next episode will be Nasty. Is the horror episode where they rent a VCR,
right.
And Terry Jones is in it. It's one of the strongest episodes, and our guest for that will be the phenomenal guitarist and British comedy aficionado Matt Tate will be on that. Who's we've had him back on the Cabinet of Comics days, and it's been a long time since we talked to him. But one of the things I love about this is getting to talk to friends of mine that are really good and deserve to be recorded for an hour. Eddie, you were
Eddie.
I assume you're implying me. Thank you very much.
But we will be back in 2 weeks again. If you're listening to the audio of this, you wait 1 week and the video will be out on YouTube. We premiere the audio each week. The next week we do the video, and then the next week we have a new episode. So if you're listening to this now, come back in 2 weeks for Nasty. And if you're listening to it, not watching it, come back in 1 week to see Diana Ross.
Oh, indeed. Yeah.
And you can watch us drink.
Yes.
And with that, we will talk to you next time. Good night, everyone.
Namaste, guys. Thank you.
Because we may not be the young ones very long.